Good evening. It is 6:30, and I would like to call the Planning Commission for City of Burnsville to order. Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for your time. Staff?
Good evening.
Good evening. Our first agenda item is to approve the agenda. Staff, do you have any changes?
None from staff.
Commissioners, any changes or comments? Okay, I'd stand for a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any comment? Very good. If there's no comment, then go to a vote, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Our next item is approval of minutes of the October 8th Planning Commission meeting. Staff, are there any changes to the minutes?
None from staff.
Commissioners, anybody see anything that needs to be changed?
I'd like to congratulate Chair Walter for making it into the minutes.
Very good.
Nothing.
Any other comment or stand for motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Have a motion?
Moved.
We have one.
Second, sorry.
Very good, thank you. Any other comment? Move to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next item is a public hearing for Roush General Contracting LLC for a comprehensive plan amendment from IND Industry to Limited Business to business located at 2350 County Road 42 West for a car wash and quick service restaurant. And presenting is Ms. Dean.
Good evening, Chair, members of the commission. We do have the applicant in the audience tonight if there's any specific questions of them. The particular site, it's north of County Road 42, just east of the railroad, Sioux Line Railroad. Nearest major, I guess, intersection is County Road 5 to the east. General location surrounded by industrial zoning to the east and west. To the north, we do have single family or low density residential. To the south, you have a mix of business and fast food type services to the south. So the specific requested is for a comprehensive guide plan change or land use change from our 2030 comprehensive plan. The request is circled in the map you see here. Currently, it is industrial limited business, which does allow for some type of business, some type of restaurant, like full service restaurant. But the conceptual use for the site is very retail in nature. Both a car wash is proposed, although not before you tonight for the specific use, car wash and a quick service restaurant. So because of those two uses, it would be incompatible with the current guiding of the property. Because of timing, this needs to go before the Metropolitan Council before December 31st. And so the request is before you to meet that deadline, assuming the proposal's approved. That would be kind of step one in the process. Step two would be a future development application to the city for the zoning, replatting of the property, planning and development request, and a detailed look at traffic, architecture, setbacks, green space, buffering, things like that. But this is kind of that step one in the process. And then the proposed land use change is for business, again, to accommodate those two conceptual uses. Just a little background history. In 2015, Metro Self-Storage was approved. As part of a plat, there was a conceptual plan that showed a small office building on the vacant site. It's been marketed for a while, and most currently, actually in 2017, the City Council heard a proposal for a car wash only, one building. There was council support for a car wash. They felt it was in keeping in general with the area, that it provided some transition. And again, there was overall consensus for support. That never panned out, but in 2018, before the council, the current applicant showed a concept plan, and there was consensus for support of the use. because they received council consensus, they felt comfortable, the applicant felt comfortable proceeding with the request for the land use change. And that's why they're before you tonight. So the next steps are city council, after your recommendation. This will go to the Metropolitan Council for their review. It'll come back to city council if the Met Council approves, and then we anticipate a development application. The development application can come really at any point. It can come after the council and Metropolitan Council decision, or it can run concurrently. That would be at the risk of the applicant. So just I want to just show you a conceptual plan of what's proposed. This isn't specifically what you'll be taking action on tonight. Again, it's just the land use change. But the proposal is for more your retail and business, fast food, restaurant type use. Staff does recommend approval of the proposal to change the comp plan from industrial limited business to business. With that, as I mentioned before, the applicant is in the audience to help answer any specific questions you might have, and I can also stand for questions.
Thank you, Regina. So just to be clear then, our current action is strictly a use change from limited business industrial to business.
Correct.
And that's really what we're looking at tonight. Any questions of staff? Mr. Commissioner Workman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regina, just a quick question on the holding pond that's there. Is that, how, I guess, can you tell me where the proposed impact of the development is going to fall if everything goes?
Sure. So the aerial photo, I'll use this as an example. In general, the car wash would be located here where the I in site plan is. And then generally where the E in site is where the quick service restaurant would be located. What we've seen so far is conceptual. We have not seen fully engineered, fully architecture drawings, landscape plan. Additional details would be necessary. I'm gonna flip to the site plan so it kind of cuts off, so the holding pond would be somewhere in this general area where my arrow is.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of staff? Commissioner Henderson?
This may be looking too much into the weeds, but I just have a quick question. Why does it need to be replatted?
So the property is currently an outlot, and in order to develop on the property, it needs to be a lot of record, so like a lot 1, block 1, whatever addition.
Okay, okay, good, thank you.
Okay. Further questions of staff? Very good. Any questions of the applicant? Very good. This is a public hearing, so I think at this point I will open the public hearing at 6:38 p.m. Anybody who would like to speak to this item can come up to the podium. If you did sign in outside, we have your name. Otherwise, we would still like you to have your name for the record.
I'm James Hewitt. I'm a resident at 2229 Friendship Lane, so I'm immediately behind the property in question. We really do not favor this, and our reasons are primarily for noise and disruption to residential lifestyle. In the past and historically, this commission has approved businesses to be developed in that area that were more or less compatible with a residential area. They're quiet businesses, they're offices, they're you know, and in the one case where there is a restaurant, and I've been on this property for 30 years, so I've been here before. But in the area where there was a restaurant approved, and the discussion was the fact that there was a favorable buffer of business and distance between that restaurant and the properties and residences behind it. And at this point, we're just not satisfied that anything built in that area out there is not going to disrupt property and devalue property values.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Hewitt, I think we'll take that, and staff will take that down, and obviously the applicant will be well aware of what you're asking for. Currently, we are working on a change of use from the current limited business or industrial to a neighborhood business, or a business use, actually. So we're actually just looking at the use itself, which could allow other, well, uses. It could, it basically opens up some of what can go in there. Right now, there is no formal application in for this
It's a
particular
zoning
use.
change, is what
Correct.
specifically you're saying?
Correct.
Not a building permit
Correct.
application?
When that application comes in, there'll be further opportunity for you to review and discuss your concerns as well.
It'll be more relevant at that moment.
Well,
yeah.
not necessarily, because obviously they can hear you right now too, and they'll be well aware of the concerns. So I wanted to thank you for your time.
All right.
I'm Dave Krieg. I live at 2225 Friendship Lane, and I'll just echo what Jim said, is the noise, even from some of the buildings that are there now, is very disruptive. They empty the garbage like at 4 in the morning sometimes, and it'll wake you right up there. Those buildings are just as close as what a residential building would be, and instead they've got the activities of the businesses. So I hope you will consider that, as the planning keeps going on.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else to speak to this item? Anyone else to speak to this item? Very good. I will close the hearing at 6:42. Bring it back to Planning Commission for discussion or a motion on the land use change.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Workman.
sounds like there's no discussion, so I'd like to make a recommendation, or a motion rather, that the planning commission recommend to the city council approval of the proposed comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use from industrial, I don't know what LB stands for.
Limited business.
Limited business to business.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Any other comment or questions or discussion on the motion? Very good. Move to the vote then, please. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Very good. Our next item, this will be going to the city council on November 5th, which is a Monday because of the election, just so everybody's aware of the date change. They, again, will just be looking at this as a land use change, and then as Regina talked about, it does move on then to the Met Council and then back to the city council. And at some point, we presume that the landowner would make an application, and then obviously you guys will be welcome back to discuss with us at that time too. Thank you. Next item would be a public hearing of Ali and Deborah Award for a preliminary and final plat and variance request for 1500 Joseph Street. Regina.
Good evening, Chair, Commission. The particular site is located just east of Crystal Lake, where Joseph Street comes to an end. The Crystal Lake is a recreational development water, and this is an abutting lake. Aerial photos provided to give you an idea of the immediate surrounding area. And then the zoning map, primarily single-family residential, R1 zoning district and park, as well as the lake. So part of the request is a preliminary and final plat. I do want to point out, back in the late 80s, the property owner vacated a portion of the roadway. Joseph Street actually extends to the lake. They vacated the parcel, or they vacated the right-of-way and never joined the two pieces of property together. When the current owner of the property purchased the property, they decided to pursue joining the property to make it part of their lot. And so I've just circled in red the area that was vacated that will be joined officially with this lot as part of the preliminary and final plat. What this enables, it gives the property additional land, which brings it in greater compliance with the city code minimum standards, as well as, I'll leave it at that for now. And then the final plat, which again is part of your recommendation to council. And ultimately, plats will go to Dakota County for their final approval. I want to show an overview of the proposed site plan. There is an existing home on the property built in the 40s prior to Burnsville City Code, prior to Burnsville incorporating. It was used as a cabin for many years and in the same family, and I guess it turned over time. And it's kind of come to end of life cycle. Current property owner would like to rebuild a house or build a house in similar location. However, they're proposing not to go any closer to the lake than the existing home. I wanted to outline the existing one-story home. Part of the new home does overlap. However, I want to be sure to point out that they're removing some nonconformities right now by building it further to the proposed house further to the east. They're also proposing to remove an existing shed and concrete slab, which is closer to the lake as well. It's a proposed site plan, just a different view of what's proposed. And then elevations, which we can get into further detail. The existing home, again, a small cabin, and then the proposed home. This is looking to the west. That's looking lakeside to the east. And then just a conceptual rendering, kind of 3D view from the lake. And then the east and west elevation. The south and north elevation, which we can get into more detail. So I do want to point out there's a number of variances that are requested in your report. I provided sort of a list as well as a chart comparing the two. And I can certainly go through the variance request. So there is a variance from the ordinary high water level that's requested. 75 feet is the distance from the ordinary high water level to the structure. And currently, the house deck is 30 feet from that line. The proposal is to go to 40 feet. So they're increasing what's there, but they're still not in compliance, therefore a variance. Staff supports that request. There is a variance request to allow a 14-foot front yard setback from the house and the garage to the front property line. This is an odd-shaped lot with different access, so take that into consideration when you're looking at the practical difficulties as well. Staff does support the request. One of the reasons for the request is the applicant is proposing to add a garage. A garage does not exist today. It's a two-car garage, which meets our minimum standards, and it certainly brings the site from that aspect into greater compliance with our parking standards. There is a variance request for a 9.5 feet from the north property line. City code requires 10 feet. I should point out that the existing house is 2.9 feet from the north property line. So while it's still a variance request, it's greater compliance than what it is today. There's a variance request for the lot size. Again, with plating of the property, it brings the lot size in greater compliance. Our minimum R1 standard is 10,000 square feet, and the minimum shoreland overlay district is 20,000 square feet. So although it's still non-conforming, again, they're bringing it in greater compliance. There's a variance to allow a 40-foot lot width. City code requires 80 feet. Existing condition, staff supports. There's a variance request for a flat roof over the garage and over a portion of the home that the applicant's proposing to use as a deck. We do have a city code provision that talks about homes having a pitched roof. The applicant stated that they're willing to use a portion of the garage roof, perhaps for a green roof or solar panels in the future. Certainly solar can be on flat or pitched roofs, but they do have a commitment to sustainability that I wanted to point out. There is a variance request for the driveway setback. On one of the plans, it appears to be about 1 foot away, and that's why it's called out as such. City code requires 5 feet. Staff does not support this particular request, and we're asking that the applicant meet city code in that respect. There is a specific right-of-way setback, which I called out in the chart, but not in the list. Within your staff report, there's a 30-foot setback that's required at the closest point to the right-of-way, and they're proposing 10 feet. This is a chart that goes over existing conditions, if they're compliant or not, or if they meet the setbacks. So as you're just glancing at this chart, a lot of the conditions are existing conditions that, as part of the request, they'd like to come in and recognize those specific requests. In your packet, there is a checklist. We have a 19-point checklist that we ask applicants to provide answers to. And this is used to help give Planning Commission and Council guidance whether or not you should consider approving a variance. Through that checklist, there were 11 positive factors, 4 negative factors, 2 not applicable, and then 2 which kind of went back and forth depending, because there's so many different requests as part of the variance because of those existing conditions, to kind of hit on both positive and negative. Staff does recommend approval of the request as presented, with the exception of the one variance request in respect to the driveway. We do have a series of recommendations that we feel should be subject to approval. One, that a shoreline buffer seed mix be reviewed by and approved by the Parks, Rec, and Natural Resources Commission. I should state that variances that are within a shoreline are required to go in front of the Parks, Rec, and Natural Resources Commission according to our city policies. The applicant is proposing a shoreline buffer, which is required. However, just a little more detail is needed in that respect. The applicant shall restore the site to sod or seed, meeting city code. So this is the rest of the property. It was a little unclear if they met that requirement. It would be something that's required by code, but we just wanted to note that. That the south portion of the driveway be revised to meet city code requirements. That's the driveway. The applicant shall incorporate 2 front yard or side yard trees as part of their building permit application. And there is a engineering memo, and it has standard requirements that we asked to be corrected prior to moving forward with the preliminary and final plat approvals and through building permit. That, I don't think that made it into your packet, but it's pretty much a standard requirements. With that, the applicant is here to certainly help answer any questions, and I can help answer any questions that were missed as part of the background report.
Very good, thank you, Regina. Any questions of staff? And I realize there's a lot here. So anybody have, go ahead, Commissioner.
Is this something where neighbors get involved at well and get asked, what their thoughts are?
So everyone within 350 feet of the project boundary is notified by a public notice that's mailed to their property. It's also, of course, published on our city website, published in the newspaper. But the applicant's actually taken some additional steps to personally meet one-on-one with the adjacent neighbors to the north and south. So they have been in contact.
Questions? Commissioner Workman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regina, can you just help me understand the driveway a little bit more? I've been looking at the plan versus, Google Earth and what I saw out there, but where is the setback? Is it,
So can you see my arrow? Okay. So the driveway is in that gray color, and then this is the property line to the south. So we have a code requirement that it be 5 feet away, which would put you about here. So they'd have to kind of swing their driveway something like that.
Regina,
In
is there a way
order
to,
to meet the setback.
is there a way for us to look at that a little closer? I mean, what are they tying into
let
at that
me-
location, I guess? Commissioner Workman, I'm trying
because
to.
I guess that's connecting to Joseph Street.
Which isn't
So that-
actually a street right there.
Well, there's curb on either side, and then where does it go?
Let me see if I can switch to something else. Hang on.
Sure.
Because you're right, it does end. You see it?
So right
I-
now, this is basically
Goes.
grass here.
I think that, I'm sorry, Regina, I think that other map does show a line of grass to asphalt that might help us a little bit.
This one here?
Yeah, that, either of those two, actually. It appears that, to me, it appears as you are sort of where the driveway is now, there's an arrow that's in the far right that goes up to the curb. And then you're right now, you're on a line that continues in sort of a curve to the west and then down and then back, and that appears to be the edge of the asphalt. It's actually labeled bituminous surface there right now. Right there. So it appears that the asphalt may just stub into the lot right at that location. And that might show it too if we can blow that up. Maybe,
Kind of fuzzy, but
sort of right in that area right there.
Sure. Is that a shared driveway then, where Joseph ends? So where you're hovering right now, does that driveway go into the southern property?
so this right here is right-of-way, it's city right-of-way
Okay.
here. And so the applicant's driveway will go in this general location here.
And then
And
further
their
to the?
driveway
Okay.
is down, the
Okay,
property to the south, their driveway is here.
All right.
But this is all city right-of-way here.
And then are we right in looking at that black line that's just below where your cursor is as being a property line?
Correct.
Okay, so currently the road does extend into the neighbor's property a little bit. Possibly from the photo.
I don't know if this is drawn correctly.
I think it shows up on the survey that way though too.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, you can see the angled line there from their property corner. And then there's the bituminous surface line again. So it appears that currently Joseph Street may be on what used to be the right-of-way.
Right, and so the midpoint of this is all right-of-way, and it goes down to the lake. But it's like lawn area and grassed area, even though it technically is city.
Oh, so Joseph Avenue on the other lot, not that it's part of this, but that still is right-of-way.
Right. It
Oh,
hasn't
then,
been,
okay.
it has not been vacated.
Okay.
The property owner to the south can make that request
Sure.
at some point in the future,
Sure.
but, and by the looks of the shed, they may be using it now.
Sure.
So, this is what I'm trying to understand. So where the zero lot line is affecting the butt-in?
So the driveway, staff is asking that it's be 5 feet from this property line here. That
So
it
it's,
comes like this. Right now, it comes to about here on one of the plans.
You want to go down to the site plan again?
it's a small detail. I'm just failing to wrap my head around it.
So,
So right now,
So basically, they're just
from here to
looking-
here, needs to be up right in this range, more like
Oh, it
5
needs-
feet.
Needs to be 5 feet,
Needs
wherever
to be
that
5
is.
feet.
I see what you're saying.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure, I have
So
a
this,
question.
this driveway would have to curve in.
Okay. All right, I wasn't totally grasping that, but I understand now.
Commissioner Workman, you have anything else?
No, thank
Commissioner
you.
Henderson, you were next.
I forgot at the moment.
Okay. Commissioner Timmerman.
Ms. Dean, the question I have, and not to be confrontational, but there's 8 variances that are being requested here, and I'm curious why staff believes that this particular variance is of interest.
so a number of the requests are to recognize the existing conditions. So they exist today. The site's what would be called non-conforming. So from a staff standpoint, they're either recognizing those existing conditions or, in many cases, lessening what's already there today and making it in greater conformance. So from that standpoint, we feel it's a reasonable request. It's in character with the neighborhood. It's a reasonable use of property. They're making the situation better in many respects for the shoreline buffer. They're meeting impervious surface requirements. They're meeting many of the setbacks, or again, they're not necessarily asking for anything more intense than what's out there today in many respects.
As a follow-up, I have greater concerns about some of the other variances, to be quite honest. And I'm glad to know that the applicants have spoken with the neighbors. I wish they were here so we could get some testimony from them as well. But if you go back to the aerial of, yes, this one here, to me, the 1 foot setback is negligible. It doesn't seem to affect the property as a whole. And so that's why I was asking, is why that particular variance? But thank you for the explanation. That makes sense, that's one thing that could be adjusted to be conforming.
Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Henderson.
Yep. Regarding the elevations, let's see, on the west-facing elevation, it has the elevation for, looks like to the middle of the roof. Is that supposed to go all the way? Is that how elevation is measured, all the way to the top of the roof?
So in Burnsville City Code, we have a definition of height in our zoning code. And essentially, it's measured to the midpoint of the roof. There is a building code requirement as well on how to measure height. And it's very similar, but it is measured to the
Okay.
midpoint.
Essentially, this house doesn't have any issue with height, though.
That's correct.
Okay.
It meets our city code
Thank
requirements.
you, commissioners. Any other questions?
Comment.
Well-
I like what they want to do.
Okay, and
Yeah.
we do, this is a public hearing, so we'll be moving on.
Yeah.
Regina, I had a couple questions. I guess the issue of the road right-of-way, that was not the fault of this owner, and there are no issues that the city sees with the combination, then the title and all of the paperwork will allow this to happen, to your knowledge?
Correct.
Okay. I think the other is with the requirement, the recommendation that the applicant restore the site to sod or seed, does that limit them only to yard, or are they allowed to do other native plantings? So it sounds like you said, they're interested in some sustainability, they have the buffer. Are they allowed to, does this recommendation limit them in any way that way?
No, it would not. They would be limited to whatever's in city code for restoration.
Very good. Couple of things here, and I think I'm going to take care of them after the public hearing. So unless there's any other questions, I'd like to open the public hearing on this matter then at 7:06. Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this item? Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item? Very well, I will close the public hearing at 7:06. Also, I guess the couple of things I wanted to point out, that because this is a variance, and I don't know that everybody would handle it this way, but generally, we're required to meet the four standards that are on the third page of our thing, and that basically that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not provided by an official control is the first item. And we need to agree with staff that the proposed use is a reasonable request. I think I'd like to point out that in response to Commissioner Timmerman, that should a lot like this be subject to all of the current code items, the lot may not be buildable if it was held to the strict standard. I think that's exactly why a variance is typically allowed for.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
Okay, and that's just the discussion that I wanted to have.
Good.
And really, the main comment that I have for this particular project is the second bullet point, and that's that the plight of the landowner due to circumstances unique to the property were not created by the landowner. I understand that this property is uniquely shaped, it's uniquely positioned. However, from the background information that we have, this property was not, it's not being developed by the original owner, the original owner's family. This property was purchased with the risk that there were these particular variances that would need to be approved.
Right.
And so I like the design, I like the project.
Right.
My point, however, is that I don't agree that the plight is not with the landowner in this particular circumstance. And I just want the commission to keep that in mind as we're moving forward.
Yeah, I think the biggest item that I've run into in my own experience with time is that, in this case, the lot existed prior to any of the zoning codes being in place. And while the term landowner can be taken as the current one, there are also times where the landowner, the original landowner, when the zoning was put in place, basically had this in place as well. And I agree, there are times where that can affect a decision, and there are times where perhaps it doesn't. The next one was the whether or not it alters the essential character of the locality. And again, we want to be aware of that and make sure that we agree with staff's comments on it. And then do economic considerations constitute the practical difficulties, and do we agree that they do not? And I think those factors all need to be part of the record here, and that we are addressing them, even acknowledging that we agree with staff. So with that said, any other comments from commissioners on this matter? Very good. Any other discussion? Stand for a motion.
2 for 2 tonight? I can do it.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the planning commission recommend to the city council approval of a subject to the following conditions listed in our background, 1 through 5. Unless you'd like me to read them.
I think as
As stated.
by staff, yeah.
Yep.
What works? We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? I guess I would like to consider, have the commission consider, is there a true benefit to restricting the driveway to the 5-foot side yard versus the 1 foot side yard? Staff, I realize I'm backing up a little bit. Is there a curve issue or something that that staff has looked into as to whether that creates a hardship for the landowner or not?
The applicant is in the audience.
Okay.
If you wanted them to approach.
I think I will.
Okay.
I think I will, even though the public hearing's closed, I think I will invite them up. Can I get your name for the record, please?
Yep, hi, I'm Ali Awad.
Okay. And your address is?
Address of this property is 1500 Joseph Street, and our current address is 10670 McCool Drive, West in Burnsville.
Okay, could I pose the question to you then? Does that restriction that staff has asked for pose a hardship to you?
We can certainly work around it. I guess we weren't aware of the setback when we submitted that site plan.
Okay,
So.
Very
it's-
good.
If it's 5 feet, we can make that work.
very good, thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to say the staff has been very helpful as we've gone through this process, so I appreciate all their time and advice.
Yeah, we've heard that once or twice before.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very well. With that done, I would go for a vote then, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0. And your item goes to the PNRC, Public Resource Natural Commission, on November 19th, and then to City Council on December 4th. Very well. We'll move on then to our next item, which is updates. And we'll have Regina offer those once she returns to her chair.
Hi. So just a couple of updates. At your last Planning Commission meeting, you had 3 items that moved forward to City Council. The council took action on the Healy Ramey project. They voted 5-0. That was on the consent agenda, but at the request of neighbors, it was removed for further discussion. But again, it was approved 5-0. That particular project is in the process of an EAW, Environmental Assessment Worksheet. That process has kicked off. The EAW is on our city website under Planning and Projects. So the public is welcome to take a look at that and provide any comments. The City Council also took action on the Roars project, the former AAA land at 7 Travelers Trail. That particular item was on the regular agenda due to the Planning Commission vote. City Council voted 5-0 in favor of that project. And then Northland Real Estate, that's that Grace United Methodist Church project. That was, I believe, 3-2 by the Planning Commission. It was on the regular agenda, a lot of public testimony. That project was voted 5-0 by the City Council. The next Planning Commission meeting is Wednesday, November 14th. We had to do some moving around due to elections and due to Veterans Day. So the schedule got kind of goofy, but please mark that on your calendar if it's not already, and then please notify us if you are unable to attend due to that date change. With that, I do have the draft agenda for the November 14th meeting date.
Very good, thank you. Commissioners, with that, I think we are ready for adjournment. I think other business is all done tonight. Can I have a motion, please?
I move to adjourn.
Have a motion?
Second?
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and our meeting is over. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.